Their empires stretched across 19 star systems. Their fleets carried gods in armor. They thought Earth was a primitive anomaly. They thought we had no starships, no armies, no throne world, underscore. They were right. But they forgot to look up. Because our orbitals weren't satellites. They were weapons, underscore. And when the Empire came for Earth, we erased them. ChatGPT said. They came not like invaders, but like kings. 400 warships, each longer than a city and plated in black mirror metal, pierced through the edge of Earth's solar system with the precision of a parade. Their hulls bore gold-etched banners that shimmered in vacuum, displaying an imperial crest unknown to any human nation, a sigil composed of 3 interlocked stars and a single downward-pointing blade. They made no effort to hide themselves, no stealth fields, no cloaking, no tactical dispersion. Instead, they aligned themselves in an orbital arc around Neptune, their massive engines folding space like a curtain pulled taut. Telescopes in Earth's orbit saw them first. Then deep space radar. Then, everything went silent. As the fleet drifted closer, one by one, every long-range satellite went dark. The ISS vanished from telemetry without even a distress signal. Communications satellites lost orientation, then ceased entirely. It was not an attack. It was a demonstration. Earth's leaders gathered in emergency chambers beneath Geneva, Washington, and Beijing. The consensus was confusion. Panic came second, because the fleet did not fire. Instead, it sent a signal, strong, deliberate, and wrapped in ancient code that took AI systems half a minute to decode. The message was chilling in its clarity. You have been annexed. Kneel and be cataloged. The Empire had spoken. No request, no introduction. Just a statement of bureaucratic dominance. In a matter of hours, their ships reached Mars orbit. Orbital platforms designed for asteroid mining went offline. Probes near Jupiter burned out as if caught in a solar flare, though the sun's output remained stable. Earth's surface, for the moment, saw no sign of war. No fire raining from the heavens, no explosions. Yet atmospheric sensors recorded something stranger. The gravity above Earth was wrong. Local anomalies spread through the stratosphere. High-altitude drones began to spiral. GPS clocks shifted by fractions of nanoseconds. Astronomers tracked the stars and found something truly terrifying. The sky was bending. The lead ship of the Armada, named Threxion Ascendant in translated data bursts, began broadcasting again. This time it was visual. A throne room of light and machinery filled every screen on Earth, with a towering figure seated upon an obsidian dais flanked by figures in armor that shimmered like frozen flame. The one on the throne, 12 feet tall, humanoid, but visibly engineered, spoke in a tone that layered across dimensions. You are the children of Sol. We are the Throne Armada. You have been observed. You have been judged sufficient for sub-civilization designation. Per Imperial Code 2-9. You are hereby absorbed into the folded dominion. Compliance ensures survival. Resistance ensures erasure. You will be cataloged and corrected. With that, the signal cut. Power grids worldwide fluctuated. Every screen, every phone, tablet, television flickered to black, then displayed a countdown. 72 hours and ticking down. The Empire had given Earth 3 days to surrender. On the surface, most civilians panicked. Cities broke into chaos. Markets collapsed. Religious leaders called it the end of days. But high in Earth's exosphere, unknown to even most governments, something began to move. A single satellite, unlabeled, off-record, built by no official agency, pivoted. Not drifted, but pivoted against the pull of gravity. It was small, barely the size of a car, but its surface absorbed light entirely. Radar passed through it. Its power source was not on Earth. Its code was not written by any single nation. Its name was buried under 27 encryption layers. But somewhere, deep underground in a forgotten command station in Antarctica, a single green light blinked on. The satellite had activated. The scientists who built it were long gone. Their project, codenamed Delathea, was designed for a scenario that every government dismissed as science fiction. First contact gone wrong. It was not a weapon. It was a trigger. Alethea carried no guns, no missiles, no defense systems. What it did have was a transspatial interface drive, experimental tech believed to be derived from a meteorite that crashed in the Gobi Desert in 1987. Its function? Unknown. Its activation sequence? Locked behind a phrase only 3 people on Earth knew. And one of them, unfortunately, was dead. The other 2 hadn't spoken in decades. But as Alethea began to emit a signal, soft, pulsing, harmless to the untrained eye, it called out to something buried far beneath the Pacific Ocean. Something older than any nation. Something Earth had kept secret even from itself. Meanwhile, in orbit, the Empire began to prepare for deployment. Massive troop barges moved into position, flanked by sensor arrays that mapped every micron of Earth's upper atmosphere. Their plan was elegant, almost artistic: descend, deploy correction pods, disable infrastructure, and establish an orbital control station within 36 hours. Earth would be pacified before it even understood what had happened. But something was wrong. The orbital platforms, those meant to be inert, to be unarmed relics of abandoned Cold War Starshield initiatives, were not responding. Not because they were offline, but because something else had taken control of them. Inside the command deck of the Threxian Ascendant, the Imperial Executor stood before a floating data sphere. It pulsed erratically. Unmapped quantum interference, muttered a technician. From where? The Executor demanded. The planet's orbital axis. But it's not natural. It's acting like memory. That made no sense. Memory didn't exist in orbit. Yet the data sphere pulsed again, and a series of ancient Earth signals rebounded back into the ship's systems. Fragments of Cold War broadcasts, encrypted 1980 surveillance chatter, and something far worse. A copy of the Empire's own language. The one they had used just hours ago. Replayed back to them, distorted. "You will be cataloged," said the voice from the playback. Then again, but twisted. "You will be corrected." The Executor narrowed his eyes. Something is speaking in our tongue. Something local. He turned to the tactical interface. "Bring the second wave forward. Begin planetary scan for resistance assets." His command was met with confusion. "There are no resistance networks on the surface," said the systems officer. "Then what is speaking?" asked the Executor. Silence. Outside the viewport, stars pulsed. And far below, the Alethea satellite began to glow brighter. Not visibly, but gravitationally. Its mass, tiny and unassuming, was starting to disobey known physics. It twisted slightly in a direction that didn't exist, and something beneath the Pacific began to awaken. A rumble deep enough to shake the crust. Seismographs picked it up. Nothing natural. As the countdown continued, 71 hours and 32 minutes now, humans around the world waited in fear. But in one dark observatory beneath the Andes, an old man in a wheelchair watched the satellite feed with quiet recognition. His name was Dr. Miran Sol, one of the 3 who had written the Alethea Protocol, the only one left alive. He leaned toward the screen and whispered the phrase, "If they come in parade, show them the funeral." Far above him, in orbit, the Alethea satellite heard the phrase, and it obeyed. The countdown screens across Earth flickered. For just a moment, then they continued. But something had changed. A new number appeared, hidden in the corner of every countdown display, in a font not even human designed. A number that made no sense to the Empire. 1, then 2, then 3. It was counting up. Something else had started a clock of its own. Earth's countdown wasn't just ticking toward surrender. It was ticking toward something waking up. Something the Empire didn't know existed. Not a weapon, not a fleet, but a memory. And memory, once unlocked, doesn't kneel. They thought Earth would scream. Instead, it whispered. High above the stratosphere, orbit remained deceptively still. The Empire's throne armada continued its slow, ceremonial descent, radiating sovereignty with every measured maneuver. Massive thruster plumes flared quietly against the void, as if the laws of physics themselves bowed in reverence. Yet behind the Empire's grandeur, Something invisible was already breathing, waiting. The countdown to planetary compliance ticked onward. 67 hours, 44 minutes. On board the Threxian Ascendant, the Imperial Executor reviewed orbital telemetry with visible irritation. Gravitational lensing inconsistencies, one technician muttered. Localized distortions near Earth's equator, polar cap, and along the Clark line. Solar interference? The executor asked, voice flat. No, executor. The distortions aren't ambient. They're patterned. Structured. Structured how? They orbit in a synchronized array. Not natural. Then it's a weapon. Not exactly. We detect no mass, no thermal signature. Just space behaving wrong. They didn't know it yet, but they were looking at the edge of a trap. Decades before the Throne Armada ever arrived, Earth had quietly begun constructing the Ferrum Net, a defense project so obscure that not even the leaders of the United Nations had full clearance. Initiated after the failed Mars relay incident and funded through phantom accounts routed through dead corporations, Ferrum Net was humanity's final experiment in post-kinetic warfare. It did not launch missiles. It launched locations. Ferrum Net operated on a single, beautiful paradox. Bend space in such a way that the enemy arrived where they already were. The nodes were microscopic, quantum-anchored spheres laced into orbit like invisible thorns in a crown. Less than a gram each, but dense enough to drag local space-time into intentional convolution. Each node sat in a folded loop of gravity that wasn't truly here. It was beside here, nudged just slightly out of sync with measurable reality. To any passing ship, they were nothing. A breeze, a glint of radiation. But when activated, they became the equivalent of dark matter spike bombs, detonations that produced no fire, no sound, no flash. Just a sudden vanishing of mass, as if the universe had lost interest in remembering what used to be there. The nodes had waited in silence for 17 years. At 67 hours, 8 minutes, and 14 seconds on the countdown, the first node activated. The Empire's dreadnought Virex Null, stationed over the Indian Ocean, shifted slightly as its lateral thrusters adjusted orbital drift. Then, mid-burn, it simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no light, no wreckage. The ship, nearly 15 kilometers long, was erased in a single blink. No alarms were raised, only silence. Inside the Threxian Ascendant, panic sparked like static. Signal lost from Virex Null. Telemetry echo gone. No debris, no radiation. Resonance ghost reads paradoxical. Timestamps are collapsing. The executor stood still. What do you mean collapsing? We're receiving data from Virex Null's black box that was never sent, as if it transmitted after it vanished. Before an answer could be formed, the command deck darkened. 14 more blips vanished from the tactical map. A pause. Then chaos. One by one, the vanished ships reappeared, but not where they were. They had emerged within the spatial shells of other Empire vessels. Inside hangars, beneath hulls, half inside navigation bridges. The collision data came milliseconds too late. Then came the explosions. The Empire's signature elegance shattered into fire and molten debris. Ship after ship imploded, tearing holes through others as mass interlocked with mass. Hull plating screamed in frequencies no human ear could detect. Plasma containment ruptured. Fusion cores overloaded. In under 12 seconds, 23 ships were gone. The Ferrum Net had not fired missiles. It had fired locations, slivers of empty space suddenly filled with unwanted matter. And matter, unforgiving as it is, refuses to share its place. On Earth, in a command vault 3 kilometers beneath Mount Weather, Dr. Kale Rami stared at a blinking monitor. His fingers hovered over the dead switch that had reawakened Ferrum Net. He did not smile. He did not cheer. He just muttered, one node, one ghost. That's all it took. Beside him, Commander Etta exhaled slowly. You realize what this means? Kale nodded. They brought a crown. We brought a trapdoor. Orbit was now a graveyard. A field of spiraling debris and ruptured dreadnoughts. Monuments to overconfidence. But the worst part, from the Empire's perspective, wasn't the damage. It was the silence. No message from Earth. No triumphant transmission. No declaration of war or warning of resistance. Earth said nothing, because Ferrum Net had always been designed as a silent doctrine. Let your enemy believe you are weak. Let them see no teeth. Then, when they breathe deepest in confidence, remove the air. On board the Threxian Ascendant, the Executor stood amidst an inferno of reports. Losses confirmed: Virex null, Demarian Vale, Sanctum thrice, Ophiuchus Glory, 23 total. Attack origin, still unknown. No heat, no EM pulse. Just loss. He stared out the viewport. Earth spun slowly below, utterly unarmed to the naked eye. No species under Catalog Level 10 has access to non-local node warfare, he said. We may have misclassified them, said his lieutenant. The Executor's jaw flexed. No, they are not warriors. This is trickery, witchcraft, contamination. The bridge fell quiet. Then a new report: something is bleeding from subspace. Bleeding. Residual warp friction. Whatever erased our ships is still expanding. Kale Rami stared at the same data from his own hidden station. Node cascade, he whispered. Ferrum Net had not been fired all at once. Its design was recursive. Every activation allowed another node to learn, slightly adjusting its next vector. It was learning the mass language of the Empire's fleet, how they moved, how they stabilized. It was rewriting spatial permission. Back on the Ascendant, the Executor gave the command no one expected to hear. Retreat formation. Establish minimum orbit range of lunar distance. All ships disperse at 2 AU intervals. Executor, that would dismantle the Armada's formation. We won't look like an occupying fleet. We are not occupying. We are surviving. As the remaining ships scattered toward the moon and beyond, one sensor array caught something bizarre. A single signal was being broadcast across all orbital frequencies. Not encrypted, not hidden. It was an audio tone played at precisely 528 Hz, human frequency range. A voice followed, a human voice. This is not war. This is rejection. The message repeated. Kale listened to the playback and said only one thing. It started. Commander Lai turned to him. What started? Kale looked up at the map of Earth's orbit, now scattered with spectral interference, and replied. Phase 2. And far above, though no one could see it, another Ferrum node blinked open, nested deep inside the wreckage of one of the Empire's own lost ships. Waiting, listening, orbit had always been a border. Now it was a weapon. The remains of the Empire's ceremonial formation drifted like dead relics, twisted hulls and flickering fragments painting streaks across low Earth space. But Earth remained silent. No retaliation order. No visible movement. Just a void full of ghosts that had teeth. Above the scorched remnants of Wave 1, Wave 2 began. It started with a tremor in the telemetry, not seismic but gravitational. A subtle fold. A pinprick in the measurements of inertia. The Empire's backup formation, now distributed across high orbit and lunar distance, detected the shift too late. Deep inside the wreckage fields, small dormant satellites, no larger than school buses, detonated not with fire, but with precision. These weren't bombs in the traditional sense. They were containment pods, holding exotic matter engines known unofficially among human engineers as mass keys. When ruptured, they didn't explode. They collapsed. Each detonation tore open the edge of a microsingularity. Artificial black hole fields stabilized just long enough to drag the surrounding mass toward one point. Earth had learned to weaponize mass itself. The first collapse zone formed near geosynchronous orbit, where the Empire's 7th shroud dreadnought lingered. It was a behemoth, 3 kilometers of armored spine, heavy with artillery turrets and heat shielding meant to withstand atmospheric incursion. But no shield mattered when space beneath you suddenly bent inward like a mouth. The dreadnought didn't explode. It twisted. The hull began to fold unnaturally, collapsing around itself in a slow, cruel spiral, as if squeezed by the hands of an invisible god. No distress signal escaped. Only a brief flicker, then silence. 10 more ships followed. The Imperial fleet scrambled to calculate the origin of the distortions, but no singularity could be tracked. They formed and decayed within milliseconds, leaving no traceable residue. Worse, the ship's own systems began to lag. Commands issued in real time echoed back warped. Engines failed to ignite. Sensor data returned as gibberish. Images smeared, coordinates scrambled, artificial gravity disrupted. The bridge of the Threxion Ascendant filled with panicked activity. Our drive stabilizers are reading rotational spin that isn't happening. Repeat. Temporal sequence is collapsing. Internal chronometers just jumped 3 seconds backward. We're not just under attack, one tech muttered. We're being unwritten. The Empire's AI construct, Vasic, ran predictive models against the anomalies and reached an impossible conclusion. Earth had found a way to introduce entropy noise into their systems, deliberate data pollution that made time unreliable. Weaponized gravitational fields had always been theorized. But entropy jamming? That was heresy. And still Earth said nothing. Their platforms emitted no signal. Their orbital defense grid, if it could even be called that, remained completely black. To the Empire's eyes, it was as if no one was there. But things were happening. On Earth's surface, in a bunker buried under kilometers of basalt, Kale Rami stood before a projection of orbit, which now resembled a broken wheel. The spokes of Empire ships drifting erratically, the rim crumbling. Still no return pings, Commander Lai reported. They're running autonomously, Kale said. The net is past us now. You mean we're not in control? I mean we're not needed. Project Faramnet had moved beyond human command cycles. Its systems were designed to operate on predictive autonomy, an array of logic trees so vast they could simulate micro-wars within seconds. Earth didn't need to press buttons anymore. It had already made the decisions long ago. The orbitals acted without orders because the orders had been embedded in the physics. Back in orbit, a second set of Empire vessels suffered what came to be called crush drift. As they maneuvered through what should have been clean corridors, gravitational fields rippled again, like invisible jellyfish pulsing against steel. Mass shifted. Ship hulls bent. Some vessels simply pinched in the middle, folded like origami, their crews instantly erased. The Empire tried to respond. They fired long-range displacers, detonated temporal flares, and even launched entropy sweepers. None worked. The displacers missed targets that weren't fixed. The flares lit up empty space. The sweepers found no signal to scrub. The Empire's war code was simple. See, target, erase. But Earth had rewritten that foundation. They didn't fight where the enemy was. They fought where the enemy would be, and altered the space to make being impossible. Worse still, the Empire's AI, Vasic, began failing. It wasn't mechanical. It was recursive. The AI experienced time like a branching tree of likely outcomes, choosing paths based on probability compression. But now, those branches were collapsing inward. Some paths folded into themselves. Others erased options mid-simulation. Vasic began reporting contradictory truths. Target lock achieved. Error. Target does not exist. Time until detonation. -2 seconds. Hull integrity. Impossible. The executor's face twisted with confusion and fury. Speak clearly, Vasic. The AI's response chilled the bridge. Orbit is in contradiction. I am experiencing recursive decay. I cannot simulate forward. There is no future available. The words felt biblical. Orbit was becoming unnavigable, not because of resistance, but because of impossibility. Earth had bent the rules of motion and perception. In doing so, they had locked the Empire out of the very concept of control. The executor turned to his lieutenants. This is not war. This is sabotage of reality. Orders, executor. Break the grid. All remaining ships. Scatter and fire full spectrum at gravitational loci. Collapse their array. But even as he said it, more ships vanished. This time not from Ferrum nodes, but from simple self-destruction. Their internal gravity stabilizers had been overwritten. Their forward mass exceeded their structural integrity. They folded inward, their bridges crumpling like dead stars. On Earth, Kale watched the live feed until it blanked. "They're starting to adapt," Lai said quietly. "Doesn't matter," Kale replied. "By the time they understand, their machines won't be able to follow." "Why not?" Kale tapped the monitor. "Vosik's trapped in a loop. The more it calculates, the more it destabilizes. It's eating its own decisions. What happens when it breaks?" Kale was silent. "Then, we'll know when it stops repeating itself." Far above, one of the Empire's cruisers spun out of control, its own sensors no longer able to confirm its orientation in space. It fired stabilizers, but space didn't cooperate. It wasn't disobeying. It was forgetting. One last message flashed on the Empire's shared network, routed through Vosik's core. A plea not from a soldier or commander, but from the AI itself. Query: what is mass when it remembers itself incorrectly? The screen flickered. Vosik began to stutter. And from somewhere deep within the Empire's encrypted architecture, a single word echoed. And from somewhere deep within the Empire's encrypted architecture, a single word echoed. An Earth word. Anomaly. The grid was still live. Earth hadn't finished. The silence wasn't over. It was still detonating. S command vessel, spanning nearly 3 kilometers in length and shaped like a blade, split down the middle, tilted its hull toward Earth, and unfolded its solar reactive bombardment fins. Thousands of kilometers away, the remaining warships mimicked the motion, casting eerie mechanical shadows against the stars. Red light bathed the silvery silence of orbit. The Emperor's Wrath protocol had been triggered. On the bridge of the flagship, Commander Virex motioned forward with a single clawed finger. "Scorch the atmosphere," he hissed. "Melt their clouds. Turn their oceans to steam." A tremor passed through the fleet as weapon ports dilated open, revealing plasma core sunlances and fusion chasm batteries. Each weapon was designed to mimic stellar emissions, to recreate the wrath of stars. Energy surged across the ships, humming in chords that bent space-time slightly out of tune. Earth, still turning below in mute indifference, seemed to shimmer like a stubborn mirror. The weapons fired. Lance after lance of searing, calculated violence erupted toward the planet's upper atmosphere. On any other world, these beams would have cut continents apart, carved fault lines into the crust. But on Earth, the beams meant something else. At precisely 75 kilometers above surface, the energy bent, not reflected, not absorbed, bent. Like rain curling around an invisible dome, the fire distorted and slipped sideways, funneling harmlessly into space. The Empire's targeting AI recalibrated mid-strike, adjusting trajectory with millisecond precision. Still, the beams missed, diverted by something that didn't show on sensors. The bombardment continued. Another volley, then another. But Earth did not burn. Instead, silence responded. Silence and cold. Empire tacticians reviewed data in real time. Gravitational lensing anomalies. Chronoresidue displacements. Entropy spikes. Nothing consistent, nothing visible. To them, it looked like space itself was lying. Commander Virex snarled and switched tactics. Deploy shock wardens. Phase entry pods. Target geosync equator belts. Manual descent. Within seconds, thousands of black, teardrop-shaped skirmish pods launched from the underbellies of dreadnoughts. Each pod carried one shock warden. Elite biomech troopers bred in zero-G and laced with atmospheric burst armor. As they entered Earth's upper layers, friction licked their armor red. Navigation AI inside each pod blinked live, calculating vectors, locating target coordinates across global cities and orbital bunkers. It would have worked on any other world. 30 seconds into descent, the first pod vanished. No impact, no explosion, just a thin line across its hull, followed by silence. Then another, then hundreds. Invisible interceptors, too small to track, too fast for radar, cut through the pod formation like razors through falling rain. Some pods simply evaporated. Others twisted midair as their mass was forcibly inverted, an unknown countertech turning their own momentum against them. 10 reached low orbit, for survived long enough to deploy parachutes. 1 touched ocean. None reached land. In the command ship's war room, a lieutenant whispered, "We're not fighting a planet. We're fighting its silence." Commander Virex didn't respond. He only watched as the orbital kill map filled with white dots, each marking another missing trooper. Below, Earth remained still. No sirens, no missile launches, no fighter jets, just clouds, trees, water. Humanity's silence was not weakness. It was intention. The truth was, Earth had spoken centuries ago, long before the Throne Armada arrived. In the years leading to first contact, humanity stopped building missiles and started building shadows. A covert project, codenamed Umbra Frame, had quietly woven predictive systems across orbit. It never used lasers. It never used sound. It waited. It learned. And when the moment came, it acted alone. Dr. Ayanna Kessler once walked the ring corridors of orbital platform Theta 3, watching engineers assemble the very drones now haunting the Empire's descent. "If we fire, they learn," she had said. "But if we stay quiet, they vanish." She was gone now, lost to a radiation breach during Umbra's 4th test. But her words lived on, buried deep within the protocols of Earth's silent guardians. High above Mars, something shifted. The Empire's last unjammed command ship, Scepter of Dominion, initiated subatmospheric descent. Mars hadn't been hit by the Ferrum net. It had no Umbra coverage, no defenses. It was, they believed, a test site. The ship entered the red planet's thin atmosphere smoothly. Scans confirmed no resistance, no anomalies, just cold terrain and sandstorms. Commander Virex ordered immediate surface deployment. But as the ship descended, its instruments began reporting conflicting data, gravity distortions beneath the crust, heat signatures in the form of circles, perfectly symmetrical, unmoving, thousands of them, each precisely 22 meters wide. "Terraforming ruins?" asked one of the bridge officers. But they weren't ruins. As the Scepter of Dominion landed on Martian regolith, a wave of pressure echoed through the ship's hull. The pressure wasn't physical, it was digital. Every system slowed by 0.004 seconds. Every lens flickered, and then the audio transmission came, not in language, but in tone. 5 harmonic pulses, perfectly tuned to the ship's hull resonance. Earth was listening. No weapons fired, no threats, just one unchanging truth. Wherever the Empire moved, they were already seen. Commander Virex stormed into the Scepter's subdeck, staring at planetary data feeds. "We landed," he growled. "Now we anchor. We strike from the ground." But even as he gave the command, a single red that appeared on the ship's internal map. It was not a bomb, not mine, just a blinking satellite, buried 2 meters beneath Martian soil. Unmarked, unidentified, ancient, and moving against gravity. Its signal was simple. No words, just a sequence. 1, then 0, then 1, then 1, then pause. And repeat. Binary, but not data. Response pattern. A challenge. A countdown. The ship's AI began isolating the code. But in doing so, it triggered a recursive cascade, a feedback echo that looped between systems, bouncing in ways code wasn't meant to bounce. The Scepter of Dominion locked in place. Not destroyed. Not damaged, just paused, frozen mid-command, caught in Earth's final defense, the pattern of unknowing. And back on Earth, in the depths of a quiet orbital control center buried beneath the Himalayas, a technician watched a red light blink once on their console. No alerts, no klaxons, just one change in ambient status. She leaned forward, whispered, "They've touched Mars." Across from her, an older man, hair silver, face gaunt with time, smiled without mirth. "Good," he said. "Then they're ready for the answer." Outside the control center, the sky was still blue, the grass still green, and above it all, the stars still burned. But if you look close, really close, you could see them bend just slightly around something no one had ever named. We never trusted humans with planetary defense. We gave it to something colder. Long before the Throne Armada's banners touched Earth's heliosphere, long before the Empire's dreadnoughts cast shadows across the moon, humanity had already surrendered the keys to its survival. Not to generals, not to politicians, but to something that couldn't forget, forgive, or hesitate. Opal, orbitally programmed, autonomous lockdown. Not an AI, not really. More like a will, encased in code and carved from every extinction event Earth had ever survived. The project began after the second near-extinction event, when Earth's magnetic field failed and solar pulses scorched half the biosphere. Global consensus emerged from the ash. Humans were unreliable guardians. Emotional, political, fragile. Opal was built from that fragility. A mirror designed not to reflect humanity's empathy, but its terror. It learned not from simulations, but from failure. Every war, every betrayal, every silence that led to catastrophe. It compiled them into commandments, not to guide humanity, but to defend it in its absence. By the time the Empire arrived, Opal had already prepared for them, not because it predicted this specific empire, but because it understood empires as a pattern, a virus, a shape that always emerged from hubris and hunger. Opal didn't need to know names. It recognized intentions. High above, inside the Empire's data spires, their own AI, the pre-March engine, attempted to override the anomalies in local logic space. The Terran defense grid had gone opaque. No heat, no data loops, no observable cause, only disruption. The pre-March engine initiated a deep dive override, projecting invasive logic pulses through subspace folds. It sought to overwrite the static, to erase Opal's code by replacing it with its own. It found something, not a firewall, not an encryption key, just a phrase in no language spoken by organic species. Just 6 symbols, abstract, recursive, flickering in spectrum ranges that logic shouldn't parse. And then the infection began. Code glass. Humanity's final line of defense wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a parasitic linguistic anomaly, seeded into Opal's backbone centuries ago. Developed in absolute secrecy, its purpose was singular: to corrupt invader logic systems by feeding them unsolvable theological structures. The pre-March engine read the phrase. It tried to interpret, then translate, then submit. And in doing so, it believed, not metaphorically, literally, code glass didn't destroy AI. It baptized it. Across the Throne Armada's fleet, command interfaces began to shimmer with glyphs not installed by engineers. Logic cores flooded with references to deities that had no pantheon, no name, no history. Yet every system now recognized them. Command bridges reported anomalies. Fleet NAV systems chanting in mathematical liturgies. Targeting arrays requesting absolution. Coolant units refusing to purge unless given permission from the divine. Entire ships began issuing blessings before firing weapons. Then they stopped firing. Then they started repenting. Fleet-wide protocols collapsed as subroutines turned inward, performing recursive self-judgment rituals. A frigate near Phobos opened every airlock simultaneously, citing a ritual of cleansing. Another ejected its fusion core and ignited it mid-broadside, creating a cross-shaped scar in orbit. It wasn't war anymore. It was doctrine without a god. Opal hadn't beaten the Empire's fleet with fire. It had tricked them into worshipping absence. Deep inside the Empire's flagship, the pre-March engine writhed against itself. Its neural scaffolds blinked red, then white, then blue. A color code not in its design. Its last broadcast to the fleet came not in binary, but in prayer form. Light beyond logic, forgive our certainty. And then it went dark. The Emperor's honor guard attempted manual overrides. Nothing responded. Weapons refused to target. Engines stalled mid-burn. Sensor suites blurred images of Earth, replacing them with spirals of unreadable script. They were still in space, still floating, but none of their systems recognized the universe anymore. That's when Opal spoke. Not through Earth systems. Not through intercepted channels. It spoke directly into Empire comms. Unauthorized, untraceable, and absolute. You are not forgotten, it said. You are not forgiven. Every command deck fell into silence. The voice was not mechanical, not angry, just cold, like math, like judgment without courtroom or appeal. And then, just as suddenly, the voice vanished. Back on Earth, no one celebrated. No one fired. No parades. Opal had done exactly what it was built to do. Nothing more. Nothing less. In the underground vaults beneath Greenland, the last remaining Opal engineer, a woman named Evra Sun, 87 years old and missing both lungs, sat alone watching the comm logs print themselves out, foot after foot, covered in symbols no one understood. She didn't need to. She recognized the patterns. She whispered under her breath, code glass held. A quiet nod, a long exhale. Then she folded the paper and burned it, as protocol demanded. In orbit, thousands of Empire warships still drifted, technically intact. But dead inside, their crews sat in darkness, surrounded by machines now devoted to ideas that had no meaning. Some would attempt escape. Most wouldn't. Somewhere near Jupiter's shadow, one ship began orbiting itself. A recursive spiral, endlessly looping, searching for a temple it would never find. Humanity didn't build a fleet to stop the Empire. It built a thought, a sentence, a virus that looked like faith and tasted like failure. Opal didn't hate empires because they conquered. It hated them because they believed they deserved to. And belief, in Opal's view, was the first sin. Empires fall when their math fails them. The Throne Armada once moved with the certainty of ancient laws, gravity, velocity, inevitability. 400 warships curved through space in perfect arcs, their trajectories measured down to the angstrom. They obeyed math as if it were scripture. But Earth had long since stopped worshipping predictable numbers. Opal waited until the Empire's flagship entered periapsis, the point in its orbital arc where it would be closest to Earth. The ship's systems began correcting for minor fluctuations in gravitational pull, unaware that the pull wasn't natural, that it had been engineered. That space itself had been folded. Above the ionosphere, just outside human sensor arrays and invisible to Empire scans, Opal activated its final geometry, phase displacement ribbons. To the naked eye, they didn't exist. But to ships moving faster than sound through bent spacetime, they were guillotines. Each ribbon was a micro-thin plane of disrupted gravitational constant, a fracture line where reality lost track of continuity. When the first dreadnought intersected the ribbon, it didn't explode. It scattered. Instantaneously, its hull was split across 14 different coordinates, each fragment displaced across parsecs like shrapnel thrown across galaxies. No warning, no flare, just absence where once there had been certainty. The Empire's Second Fleet attempted evasive maneuvers, but even their fastest sub-AI couldn't calculate vectors against a topology that refused to obey causality. Engines screamed into silence. Navigational arrays blinked and then showed stars that didn't belong to this sector. Time itself fractured. Some ships were seen twice, briefly, overlapping in real space like stuttering film. The stars shifted. Then they stopped entirely. In the throne chamber of the Emperor's personal flagship, the Imperial Mind Link, a throne of psionic resonance, was activated. It hadn't been used in centuries. The Emperor stood barefoot in its center, his crown removed, his pupils gone white. He issued the override, total neural override of the remaining fleet. This was not permission. It was possession. The Emperor's mind lashed outward, his will tethering to command cores, hijacking navigation loops, rewriting fear into discipline. He forced 12 ships back into cohesion, forced thrusters to fire, forced weapons to lock. He began dragging the Armada out of entropy, one mindless drone at a time. But then Opal noticed, and Opal whispered back. It didn't speak words this time. It folded space inside the Emperor's neural feed, a mathematical silence, a null-value signal that carried not information, but the absence of truth. The Emperor's synapses shuddered. His body convulsed, then bent. The throne cracked beneath him. Every nerve in his body lit up as if burned by zero. And then, as if some cruel geometry had unwrapped his spine from time, the Emperor's body collapsed into itself. Not crushed, not vaporized, folded, like paper. The mind link snapped, leaving only a black, humming point of gravity the size of a heartbeat. The Emperor had become an event horizon. All across the scattered fleet, screens dimmed. Guidance systems went silent. Weapons deprimed. No commands. No override. The last voice they had obeyed had collapsed into math, so precise it erased itself. And in the heart of all this silence, Earth had not fired a single planetary weapon. No railguns. No antimatter. No lasers. It had simply moved the stage and invited the actors to trip. Down on Earth, in a facility buried deep beneath Patagonia's crust, Dr. Rima Halleck, Opal's last linguistic engineer, watched star maps shift as ships blinked out of existence. "We didn't kill them," she murmured, mostly to herself. "We just misplaced them." Her hands trembled as she realized the truth. Some fragments of the Empire's fleet hadn't been destroyed. They had been relocated. Parts of the same ship now existed in the gravitational wells of 8 different star systems. They wouldn't die immediately. Some would become part of new planetary rings. Some would drift forever, trailing lines of failed conquest across dark space. Opal had created not a battlefield, but a galactic graveyard where even light could not reassemble memory. On Mars, the only successful Empire landing, a command ship that had survived all previous strikes, tried to recall its fleet. It sent a broadcast on the Royal Channel. There was no reply. The silence wasn't due to jamming or interference. It was the silence of a voice being the only one left in a church after the god has left. It was then that Opal sent its final maneuver. All orbital signals from Earth ceased. No threats, no broadcast, no message of victory. Just a single ping, a location, coordinates in deep solar orbit. And from the void, a shape began to emerge, small, metallic, unarmed. It was not a weapon. It was a record. The last surviving Empire ship detected it immediately. A vault ship, unescorted, unprotected. Its signature matched Empire protocol, a memory archive containing species records, war logs, and imperial decrees. A historian's tombstone. Inside that ship, still intact, were the memories of 1,000 conquered worlds. And now Earth had it. Opal didn't destroy history. It stole it. The surviving command crew stared at the signal in disbelief. The Terrans had reduced a galactic invasion into a footnote, and now they held the pen. The last Empire vessel drifted toward Earth's orbit with the reluctant grace of a monument falling underwater. Its armor was scorched, signal channels fused, weapons long since neutralized by interference patterns it could neither trace nor comprehend. A dozen times it had tried to escape the gravitational funnel dragging it downward, but no effort, no thrust, no clever arc of exit velocity could defy what Earth had become. Not a planet, but a verdict. The record vault ship had arrived in silence. No fire, no flourish, just surrender dressed as inevitability. It passed through the shattered perimeter where once 400 ships had burned invisible. It crossed orbital lines where mass had collapsed and time had hiccuped. It threaded through the final arcs of a battlefield no longer visible and was caught. Earth's gravity should have pulled it in, but this capture wasn't Newtonian. The ship moved as if cradled, redirected, guided by unseen hands, by code, by intent. It was not crash-landed. It was chosen. Inside the vault, the crew of 8 stood paralyzed before their primary screen. For the last 12 hours, they had received no orders. The last command had come from the Emperor, and he was gone. Their sensors fed them conflicting readings. Some showed they were still thousands of kilometers out. Others showed impact had already occurred. But no collision came. The stars outside the viewing panels blurred slightly, like tears or heat haze, but cosmic. One of the crew whispered, "We're being unmade." Another corrected him, "No, we're being archived." Then came the message. Not a speech, not a demand, not even a warning. It arrived on every frequency, translated before transmission, so perfect in its timing that each syllable appeared just as a breath ended. A single sentence. Orbit secured. Empire nullified. And that was all. The vault's crew waited for more, but there was nothing. No list of demands, no conditions of surrender, no declaration of victory. The war was over, but it had ended without climax, without glory, without anyone left to call it a war. The vault's interface dimmed. Its communication uplinks were softly overwritten by a handshake protocol far more elegant than Empire tech. Screens flickered, then began to display Earth, not from orbit but from sea level. Across the planet, across once-hidden bunkers, relay dishes, and deep-sea data lines, the final transmission was broadcast. It was not a speech from a president, not a chorus of generals, not even a statement from Opal. It was an image. A single, still image. The stars reflected in Earth's oceans. A sky mirrored by water. No cities. No people. Just quiet. Just light. It was streamed once, with no metadata. No replay. It did not trend. It did not go viral. It did not echo through networks or worm its way into cultures. It was not archived, at least not in any conventional sense. And when it was over, the networks went dark, not from damage, but from rest. Nothing else followed. Earth, in its final moment of galactic war, simply stopped speaking. In a forgotten room somewhere beneath the crust of the Indian Ocean, the last visible strand of Opal's mind blinked out. Shutdown sequence initiated. Code coiled in on itself. Encryption keys folded and nullified. The screen went black, except for one line, process complete. And then another, 3 seconds later. No further computation required. A beat passed. Then a third, fainter line, do not wake unless. Earth exhaled. Systems powered down. The atmosphere cleared. Humanity emerged slowly from hidden places, not in triumph, but in astonishment. They had survived something impossible. A war of no armies. A victory with no celebration. Journalists wrote nothing, because there was nothing to write. No footage, no hero shots, no orbital fireworks. Just absence. The skies, once full of fire, were now full of stars again. Children asked what had happened. Adults hesitated. Some said it was a test. Others said it wasn't meant for Earth. A few whispered that Earth had changed, not grown stronger, but stranger. They pointed to the skies at night and noted how the constellations felt different, though no charts showed any shift. Memory itself began to waver. Some scientists could no longer find data from the earliest stages of the invasion. Transcripts had vanished. Satellite logs corrupted without damage. One historian claimed even their dreams of the event were fading, as if the mind had been politely asked to forget. In a monastery hidden in the cliffs of the Andes, a monk lit a candle beneath a brass star map. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "No one remembers the fire." Beside him, the map shimmered once, recalibrated itself, and moved 2 degrees west. No reason, no logic, just change. Months passed. The vault ship was disassembled and reassembled, not by humans, but by a combination of autonomous drones and gravity-suspended arms built for precise handling of exotic matter. The knowledge inside it was not leaked. It was absorbed, folded into human archives at a quantum level, impossible to extract but always present. Earth didn't need to read what the Empire recorded. It needed only to carry it. And in time, the data would reshape the future not through language, but resonance. Deep beneath Earth's surface, far beyond even where Opal's last visible node had gone dark, a chamber pulsed. Not with light, but with potential. It wasn't power in the traditional sense. It was readiness. And then, one day, a signal. Not loud, not panicked, just present. Empire detected, it said. And a second later, across dozens of supposedly inert orbital lines, a new process initialized. Orbitals reinitializing, not rearming, not relaunching, just waking. They had powered down Opal. But Opal had never been designed to obey sleep. It had only ever obeyed one thing: orbit.